Welcome to the 1% Doctor Podcast. What separates the good from the great, the standard from the extraordinary? It's not just skill, it's not just knowledge, it's mindset, it's execution, it's the relentless pursuit of growth. And that's exactly what we talk about here on the 1% Doctor Podcast. I'm Adam Lamb. I'm your host. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the 1% Doctor Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Lamb. Today we have a very special guest, really interesting concept, and we'll get to that a little bit later in the podcast with my guest today, Dr. Greg Martin. Dr. Greg, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. Could you introduce yourself, tell everybody where you're at, and really love to find out, when did you decide to go down the path of medicine, that you wanted to become a physician?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Dr. Gregory Martin, and I'm a practicing orthopedic surgeon in Palm Beach County, Florida, and founder of Personalized Orthopedics of the Palm Beaches. And thank you so much for having me. And I really love your first question, because I wasn't, a lot of doctors, they kind of know from the time they're little, or maybe they saw their dad or their mom that's a doctor. But I actually grew up. My dad owned an auto body shop, so I grew up working with cars and
Oh,
using
cool.
my hands. And I had no idea that I wanted to be a doctor, but my mom and my grandfather really wanted me to go to college and not get into auto body. So I did that, still really not knowing what I wanted to do. And believe it or not, my freshman year, I actually fell through a window. Kind of a long story, but
Wow.
I cut my leg open and I looked down and I looked right into my quadriceps muscle, and I wrapped a T-shirt around my leg, went to the nurse's office. They immediately sent me to the hospital, and I watched this doctor repair my leg, and I just right in front of me. And I knew at that moment, that's what I want to do. I want to be a surgeon.
That's all. Here's what's interesting. And I would tell you, more than 50% of the docs I interview have some sort of traumatic experience that led them into the medical environment, whether it was at a doc was in a bus rollover accident as a kid, or like they fell off a cliff, or like something that led them into it, or had a sports injury. And that's where that spark happens. So it's that's why I always ask the question. It's almost always very unique. And I think the other part, I'm a car guy. I love cars. I don't work on cars, but I like to drive cars. And I think, when you think of orthopedic surgeon and you think of like getting inside, like working on a car and an engine, the meticulousness and some of those things, like you can zoom out and see the correlation of it, and also see where, it's like you're fixing a car, you're fixing a person. That's really neat how potentially those, being in your dad's auto body shop shaped your, maybe, familiarness of like working with your hands on repairing things, which, in this case is people. And that's cool. That's really neat. So you had this kind of unfortunate accident, led you into that. That's when you decided. And so what happened? What was the pivot like from there?
Well, at that time, I was in college, and my next step was to do an observation. And, so I got a summer job with a cardiothoracic surgeon. And, he actually worked on children, which was really amazing. I mean, thank God we have people like this. He was so dedicated to these kids, and it was so inspiring to watch. And of course, I was like, wow, that's amazing. That's what I want to do. But when I saw the amount of sacrifice that he had to give, like, and even with his own family and stuff like that, that kind of stuck in the back of my head. I think he was on like his fourth or fifth wife, and I don't, it was very, very challenging, I think, for anyone to put up with that kind of dedication.
There's
To,
something
ma-
there.
to fast forward a little bit, when I got into my medical school and I was in the surgery rotation, I was on general surgery, and I was just between cases, and I heard all these saws and noise being made, and I peeked through the window, and that was my first glimpse at seeing orthopedic surgeons. And it just took over my whole trajectory, because it was just very familiar to me, a lot of the power tools and things that I grew up around. So I just kind of gravitated towards that.
It's neat, and something I want to unpack that you mentioned there that can be often looked over is, oftentimes we can see people that we would consider a role model or an example, or there's a portion of their life that we may aspire to be like, right? So you could have felt like that the original surgeon you mentioned is you can look at what he did and you're like, wow, that's great. But then there's also another area of his life where you're like, I don't know if I want that part of it, right? And so it's good to have that foresight because I think as whether it's young people or wherever you're at in life, and you're looking, maybe aspiring because somebody has something that you like, right? Like you might see someone who's like really, really fit, but they can't hold a job, they can't hold their marriage together. Like there's all these different things. And for you to be able to have that foresight of like to zoom out and say, like, I kind of want it all. I want to be able to have the freedom to have a healthy, good, sustainable family, or I want to have the freedom, whatever it might be. I think that's a good lesson that people don't consider because there's been a lot of folks that I've seen too, or young people I've mentored that they're going after this guy, or they want to be like so and so he's making money, he's got a yacht, he's got this, but he's also like not really a good person, or he's got a bunch of bad habits, or and so it's like we have to watch as we choose to follow paths of people to make sure that we look at the entire person in that process. And not that that surgeon had anything wrong with them, but it just you had the foresight to realize like what else you want in life outside of just practicing medicine. And I commend you for that. And I think not enough people do that at a young age.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting what you said before when I shared my story of what made me kind of go into being a doctor, which and you said that you hear that's like some sort of inciting event from a lot of doctors, and it's I just, I always think of it as like, they call medicine a calling, right? And it's like, it's not something I ever would have planned or anyone would have ever anticipated. And it just, I guess it's just God works in mysterious ways and he makes stuff happen. And that's what I was meant to do, and I think it's interesting to hear you say that you've heard that story again and again and again from similar things.
I agree, and that's part of the purpose of what led me into this podcast is I've worked with hundreds of thousands of doctors at this point in my career, whether I'm helping them scale their business, whether I'm helping them in some form, way, shape, or another, and I've always been kind of the guy that they can come talk to and share all kinds of things with as well through coaching and consulting. So I get to hear a lot of the stories, and I'm reminded often in that of like that I think society forgets is like there's a human behind that. There's a story behind that physician, and it matters. And I think, as you can connect with the physician on a human level, and you as a physician to the patient on a human level of like, hey, that's not just my 2 o'clock. That's Jim Smith, and he has this issue, and that issue's holding him back from being able to play with his grandkids, and that's feels like he's not good enough. Like there's a part like when we really connect, and it doesn't require a lot more. It's just the ability to impact the lives of people that are in front of you, whether it's me in front of you and as a doctor and treating you with respect and understanding you have a life and things to do, and vice versa with me as a patient. It just creates better connection. And, those are the things that are important to me in this world. And so, yeah, I want to highlight that. And so part of this, so you decide, you see the saws, you see all the cool stuff. You're like, man, that's what I want to do. I want to get into orthopedic. So you go through that process, and then what's it like to because you started your own practice, is that correct?
Ultimately, yeah, yeah, years later. Yeah.
Yeah, talk a little bit about how you get into it to the transition of kind of what I would call is transitioning from provider to entrepreneur. Obviously, you still do the work, but there's a different mindset of going to a hospital and at 9 and leaving at 5 or something like that, or whatever the time is, and actually building the business and taking care of some of those things. What were some of the challenges you had to deal with along the way?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's obviously very, very challenging to be in private practice, and a big goal of mine is to help as much as possible to preserve private practice because I believe that a lot of these big box players can never give like personalized care like private practice doctors can. But it is very, very challenging. So you in a way you have to be entrepreneurial and figure out ways to kind of improve the customer service experience
Did your
to
dad
stay.
own was that your dad's body shop? So, like, he was an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, right? So you got to see a little
Yeah.
bit of that.
Both my dad and mom owned small businesses. Yeah, my mom owned a dance school and my dad owned an auto body shop. So I grew up around that.
It's cool. And so it felt probably more natural to you than maybe somebody who didn't. And it's great that you kind of gravitated towards that. How long into practice did you make the decision to open your own private practice?
Well, like a lot of doctors starting out, I joined a big practice and there, a lot of times there's a lot of issues, a lot of doctors within practices, there's a lot of strife and ended up leaving that practice and then joining another practice that I worked really, really well in with my more one of my more senior partners. And then after working under him for a little while, we basically he got to the point where I was ready to take over. So I basically took over a private practice and I have several doctors working in the practice with me, but I'm basically own it and run it.
That's awesome. And so, and you've kind of continued that entrepreneurial heart and built something that you first integrated into your practice, which I think is pretty cool for us to talk about today too. And you shared with me, it's the MD FastPass. And at a high level, for those of us that have ever been to like an amusement park, right? You can pay a little bit extra to skip the line or be in the fast line versus the slow line type thing. So it sounds like you created something like that and you started that more in your office just because many sought after, like, you're a great orthopedic surgeon. So when you're a great orthopedic surgeon, you get a great reputation. We have a great reputation. You have great demand, and we have great demand that can create almost a waiting list or some of those kind of things too for people that want to see you. And you figured out a way to help maybe the folks that want to see it more urgently, I guess, or quicker to have the opportunity to do that. Does that sound right?
Yeah. So what made this all happen was, I early in my career really started to do some progressive things. I got involved with one thing I'm really really known for is I is personalization. So rather than like I do hip and knee replacements and we use implants for that. And most of these implants are generic and they pull them off the shelf and you kind of make it fit the patient. But I started to get very involved with this growing company which designs the implants specifically for the patient. So we use CAT scans and 3D computer automated design and 3D printing technology to manufacture parts for the individuals. So that really resonated well with patients. And because of that and a lot of other things we did, we developed a huge following. So it would often be, 4, 5, 6 months just to get a consult with me. And practicing in Palm Beach, Florida, there I do have a lot of, kind of busy, higher demand patients and I would start to get very negative reviews on Google and online from patients that honestly never met me. I mean, most of my reviews were 5 stars, but I started to see these 1 star reviews saying, hey, I waited 4 months to get an appointment with this doctor. Then I got to his office and I waited 2 hours and I stormed out mad. And this doctor may be very good, but he's very disrespectful of people's time.
Mm.
And it hurt me. It hurt me because my philosophy has always been the most important patient is always the patient in front of me, and I feel like I deserve to give them the time they need. And, unfortunately, in the economic constraints of the current healthcare system, something has to give. You either have to rush patients or you have to run behind. But if you see everyone on time and give them all the time they need, you'd go out of business very quickly because the margins are just not there. So I was in this kind of a jam where I didn't want to anger patients, but at the same time I had to keep practicing the way that I felt comfortable with. So I said, well, there must be a better way. And when you look at other industries, right, whether it's amusement parks, like you mentioned, or sporting events, or even like going to FedEx where you can expedite a package, you pay a premium and you get it there next day, or even if you need a passport, right, and you want to pay the government, they'll expedite your passport. Or if you go to the airport, you can fly first class or you can fly coach. Everyone gets the same level of safety. Everyone gets where they're going. They just get there in a different fashion, right?
Yeah, different experience, right? Like,
Yeah, it's about the experience. So I said, well, maybe there's something we could do to create a better experience, for patients.
those that want. Yeah, for those that
So
need something above and yeah, above the norm.
yeah. So when I built out my office, I built out kind of 2 separate parts. There's my regular office, and then I have what I call my personalized plus office. And I started to see people on days when I didn't usually work. Like I did a lot of implant design, as I mentioned, and teaching surgeons and stuff. So on Fridays, normally wouldn't work. I would be out traveling and teaching and developing. But then when the pandemic hit, a lot of that slowed down. So I said, well, okay, well, I'll start to develop this concept. I'll come in on demand for patients. And within a short period of time, that day would fill up with patients, and I realized it was delighting patients because they could, going to a doctor's office, a lot of times there's pain points. Number 1, it's really hard to get an appointment. A lot of doctors can be booked out for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and that's getting more and more common. And then the other roadblock is when you get to the doctor's office, you never really know what to expect. Sometimes, like me, I would run 2 hours behind often. So imagine hey, you're speaking to your boss and you need to get some time off from work to go to the doctor. Instead of being back in an hour, you're back 4 hours later. Your boss is angry. Or if you're a busy doctor, attorney, or running a business and you disappear for half the day when people are expecting you there, that's not good, and there could be a loss of a lot of revenue or relationships and clients. So
Just
this model seemed to
point
work
out
well.
to like, as a business owner, myself, I'm in that community that you're describing, and then it's like and also in this healthcare community, work with doctors, and it's so refreshing to hear a physician not only care about that, right? Because there's maybe a handful that don't, or that again they just feel the story is they're stuck in that story of the constraints and they haven't decided to try to do something different like you did. And I think that that's important. So just what it does is a testament to your character, meaning like, yeah, maybe you're running 2 hours behind. It's not because you don't care about the people that are waiting. It's because you care about the patient in front of you. And again, that could, like you said, like a could lead to a mixed review when really like you might be the most caring, best orthopedic surgeon out there, but that patient's initial experience was negative because they didn't get a chance to get into your office even because of the wait time or whatever. And for you to like want to solve that is awesome. I think that's amazing. And I really wish more physicians thought that way. And hopefully a lot that listen to this podcast will think, hey, how can I do that? And we'll tell them how they could plug in to do that in a little bit.
Well, I think it's almost at a bit of a crisis too, because there's the mental health component from physicians. Because what we're so used to saying yes. And a lot of reasons why doctors run so behind because they're constantly inundated with these add-on requests, right? So we feel I got these texts all day long. Oh, can you please work missing so and so? And you say, okay, well, yeah, I'll work. And then they get there, and then then you're running extra behind because your schedule's all off, and then you're getting home late, you're missing dinner with your family, and then everyone gets mad. So there could be a downward spiral that could affect your personal life, and then you get into this terrible cycle where you're just on a treadmill and it's not going well.
All of
So
this.
I view MD FastPass as a way for physicians to get off that treadmill and take control of their life.
I love it. And I just even one of the doctors I coach, we were talking today, and he was like, I f he's so used to dealing with the chaos and stress that you mentioned that, when I first met him and we first started working together, and he's like, "I don't feel like I'm doing enough." And I was like, that's because we reframed the way you look at your time, your schedule, your calendar. You're doing homework with your daughter. You're doing date nights with your wife. Your revenue from when you met me has X'd. Like we just changed the way we do business. You're seeing more patients are being taken care of. Like we, just reframe that model. And so it doesn't happen enough. And for the doctors that are listening, what I really want to highlight is that you just took the time to think of how can I do this better? And you implemented a process into your practice. And then from you being able to prove that model actually worked and that there was great benefit to it, great value to it, not only to you in your life, but also to the patients that wanted your help. And then now you've created a company called MD FastPass that allows other physicians, they don't have to go solve it because you solved it. They can just implement your platform and your process into there. So talk a little bit about that. I think there's a lot of doctors that listen to this that may be very interested in like leveraging what you used in their practice.
Yeah, so what we did, because I struggled for a while, like, with the success that I was having, I just tried to figure out how could I bring this to other doctors so they could benefit from what I've learned from doing this over the past 7 years. And we came up with this concept of MD FastPass. And I say we, I have a partner, Jason Bates, who helped me develop my initial program. And now, and it's funny, it's just so a little side on him, but when I first came up with the concept, he thought I was crazy, like that no one's going to do this and everything. And it's a real testament to the concept that 7 years later, he's become my kind of co-founder in this because he saw how successful it was and how well it worked. So what we have is a digital platform that we compliantly offer physicians a way to delight their patients with these expedited appointments with, kind of an elevated in-office experience. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. We match high demand doctors, doctors that have a big following that are in demand with high demand patients that are busy and really value their time and their experience.
Yeah, I love that. So it's like you have an opportunity if there's, physicians listening and obviously it looks like you guys are in the process of scaling this out, to use your platform for what you just described. If maybe they pick a certain time block or something or a certain thing that allows a patient who like really wants to get in, who's willing to, hey, if I got to pay a premium, if I got to pay extra money, but I get to move faster and I know my experience is going to be good. There's there's a price of predictability, right? And I think of it's like when you think of a toll road versus like the regular highway. You're in Florida, there's lots of toll roads. And so it's like people are going to pay money for and I won't get the toll road right, but my dad lived in Palm Beach, so I know a little bit of it. But versus like 95, they may want to take the toll road. The toll road might have less traffic. It's going to get you there faster. And you got to pay a little bit of a toll along the way versus getting into the regular road. There's no additional toll, but the toll is time, right? And for someone like myself, time is my most valuable asset. I can always make more money. I can find more money, but I can't necessarily get more time back. Even yesterday, personally, even when you're telling the story, I was thinking it was my daughter's 13th birthday, and I had to sit in a 6-hour meeting, and then I had a 4-hour board meeting after that, and I had to miss, and it's rare that that happens. I mean, my family knows because I'm so dedicated with putting these things in my calendar, like date nights, and, I don't miss any of my kids' sporting events or any of those things. Those are high priority, right? Like, I don't want them to look back and be like, "Dad worked all the time. They missed it." So it's like for me, the person, and for you, and at the same time is I can't if I have a 2 o'clock appointment with the doctor and I'm like, "How long is that gonna be?" And you're like, "It's gonna be an hour." I need to be out of there at 3 because I might have something at 3:15, right? And so there's a part of that where some people, they don't necessarily have that, or they can take a half day or a personal day at work. My time is money, right? And so there's a lot of people that I think they respect that. And they're like, "Hey, look, I will pay for speed. I will pay for proximity. I'll pay to be a priority." Not necessarily that they're a higher priority than any other patient to you, because every patient, we've always had the same philosophy. I think you agree, every patient, every time, no exception, no excuses. But if there's a way to get there faster and have that experience be smoother so that my calendar doesn't get disrupted, I highly value that. And to your point, it sounds like, your partner Jason was like, people won't pay for that, but people will. And I kind of also use this joke. It's a little separate, but real. Go out and try to buy a brand new Lamborghini or a brand new Rolls Royce or a brand new high end Porsche or a brand new Ferrari. You can't. Why? Because they're sold out. Well, they're sold out because people pay a premium for something that they want, right? And so
Yeah.
there's a community that exists and that wants that access, and it's larger than people think, and it's actually growing faster every single year. We talk about kind of the economic divide between called upper class and the lower class, meaning like the middle class is kind of disappearing. And so there's more people that want that access because they're realizing that their time is the most important thing. And so there's a price people will pay for it. So I love that you put that together. And I think more physicians should adapt to that, especially if they're very sought after like you are. And for you to have the foresight to create that's amazing. So tell us a little bit more about if I were a physician and I was looking to integrate it, talk a little bit about how easy it is and maybe some of the benefits.
Yeah, so, what we do is we really have to onboard the physician and their staff and explain. Because for me, I got to the point, and there are doctors that do what I do that just drop out of Medicare and they just charge their rates. And I was like, well, I didn't want to be a doctor just for exclusively for wealthy people. So, I wanted to have a hybrid way where we can kind of like I said, please our high demand patients, but also continue to take care of all the folks that maybe, can't afford to pay a premium fee, right?
And maybe it's
So
not as urgent, or something like that either, right? It's not as a priority.
yeah.
It's
And I
someone
think
else's.
people get choices and some people, when I first launched this, I thought, well, okay, maybe this will all be wealthy people, but I've been shocked. It's not only wealthy people, it's people who value their health, right?
Yeah.
They're nurses, they're firefighters, they're teachers, people who value their health and they do their research and they want to see the doctor they want to see they and or whatever reason they have, that's where they choose their money, and I think there's to spend their money, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Some people choose to spend their money on gambling, I mean,
Right.
so
Getting drunk every Friday. I mean, well, yeah, people
yeah.
spend money however they want to, and so no, you're totally right. You broke a story. I think there was a story of people only want to do it. Does what's my insurance cover? When I started my career in building businesses and companies in the healthcare space was around cash pay models because I wanted to work with people that wanted to be in control of their destiny, right? And I was sharing with you kind of offline of like most of those clients were people like, listen, I don't want to jump through a bunch of hoops to figure something out pay for a process that's to solve a problem quickly, right? Like you said, that it could be a basketball coach that's just like, can't, like this hip issue is, I can't wait 6 months to go see somebody. I need to get my hip issue because the season starts and I need to be out there helping and leading these kids. And it could be something that simple, right? And they're willing to pay because they value their health.
That's right. I mean, and it's just or imagine like I said, you have to see a neurologist, you develop like a slight tremor and you're told you can't get in for 6 months. I mean, imagine the mental health effects of worrying about something for 6 months without any answers versus, "Hey, he'll see you next week," right? Like, I would pay that, every day of the week to
Yeah.
have that instant clarity on what's going on with my body.
Exactly. That's great. And I think, as a society, I believe we're moving more in that trajectory of this proactive, call it actual healthcare versus sick care of, but it's really empowering people to realize like, look, when you take care of your health proactively and what you're offering is a way for them to go faster to do that. I think it's super important. And we have a healthier society, which is less pull financially on the society, which is just it's just a better situation. And I think what you've created is opening a door for people to experience that. And and I'm sure you have a vision, but as I'm hearing you talk and I've heard you talk about this before, is just like imagine every you know doctor, every physician that has a unique specialty that maybe has a high demand, they all have this MD FastPass as an opportunity to help more people faster, right? I mean, that'd be great.
That's ultimately the goal. Yeah, we wanna give doctors the ability to offer this to their patients, so patients that value their time and want this expedited premium service are willing to pay for it or kind of put in with these doctors that they wanna see. And I think, we've talked a lot about the benefits for the patients and the access, but I wouldn't underestimate the benefits for the doctors as well, because like I said, there's a lot of current stress with stress and EMR and the economics of running a practice and the constant pressures of adding in patients. So this allows doctors to decompress a little bit, bring in a bit more revenue, and also at the same time delight their patients, right? So that ends up making the physician happier, you know? So instead of having constant add-ins into their schedule where they're running behind, they just come in, they see these patients outside of their regular hours, decompress their schedule, then their regular clinic runs on time. So even the patients that are not paying that for that premium expedited access actually end up having a better experience. So I think it benefits, the patients that are not part of the program, benefits the patients that are part of the program, and it benefits the physicians that are participating. So it's a win-win-win.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you're a physician or anybody in any position. When you feel overextended and you feel stress and absorbent amount of pressure, it's really hard for you to perform at your best, right? So to your point, if the environment in the physician's office changes to have less pressure, to have less stress, to not feel like they're being so pulled and overextended, they're actually going to give better attention. Again, we talked about this in the beginning. Like, you're a human, I'm a human. Like, sometimes we have days that are hard and tough that stretch us, and we're maybe not the best version of ourselves, and then we have other days that maybe we're better. And so, like, what you're offering is also for physicians to take a bit more control of their calendar, which allows them to take more control of their energy. And that energy can be more specific and intentional with each patient because of this design. And then the patient wins out of it too. And I love, it's like the fast pass or the MD FastPass patients are happy. The regular patients are happy because we're not wedging everybody in. And then the doctor's not stressed out because the calendar, and even I'm sure your staff, right? Your staff, the front desk team, like everybody, it's like the win-win-win-win situation. I don't see there's not a negative that I could come up with yet in learning about this. And so I think it's awesome. I think what you've done is great. And, kudos to you for the entrepreneurial heart too, as a physician. I love that's one of my biggest goals with especially the private practice docs I work with, of transitioning that mindset of provider to entrepreneur, because you just see, like the entrepreneurial mind of you saw the opportunity to change something in your practice that can actually make you a better physician, right? But also it makes you just a better business leader, better thought leader. And then everybody around that idea is impacted positively. So that's great, man. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So before we hop off, and thanks for hopping on and being a guest. This is a great conversation. Share where, if someone's interested in, maybe they're in the Palm Beach area and they have an orthopedic issue and they would love to get in touch with you, what would be the best way for them to do that? And then secondly, please share some information for physicians that are interested in maybe finding out more about getting involved with MD FastPass.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, as I mentioned, my practice is in Palm Beach County, Boynton Beach, Florida, and it's called Personalized Orthopedics of the Palm Beaches. And I named it that because we really try and do personalized care. And that's really our goal. And you could find us at popb.md. That's our web. mdfastpass.com is how you can learn more about our program. We have a section for patients. We have a section for physicians. And for physicians that are interested in joining the platform, there's a form that they could fill out. And then our staff would contact them and give them all the information.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. Thanks for being a guest here on the 1% Doctor podcast. This has been amazing. Everybody that's listening, please share this episode, like it, subscribe if you have not subscribed. And listen, if you know a doc or a patient that would be interested in what we discussed here, please make sure to share this with them. It can be major valuable to their practice or to the person that needs that help. And so my name's Adam Lamb. I'm the host here at the 1% Doctor podcast. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the 1% Doctor. Please be sure to subscribe to the show where you're able to consume more podcasts, get more value, and learn more about doctors potentially just like you. Please tell a friend, review the show, and we'll see you in the next episode.